To all the world I declare, the earth is hollow and habitable within. John Cleves Symmes, Jr. In my search for interesting stories, I came across an article from 1819 on the topic of the hollow earth hypothesis, which at the time had recently been resurrected by Captain John Cleves Symmes, Jr. This figure is made to represent a section of a nest of spheres cut through the poles as, who knows, outline of the formation of the earth, according to my theory, only that there should be several more spheres added to the figure, and that the South Pole should be more open than the North. The idea of a world beneath our feet is an old one. Hell, Hades, the Hebrew Sheol. It spans many cultures across time, and it's made several appearances in science fiction. Could the Earth be hollow? Are there entire lost civilizations living beneath the Earth's crust? No. No to both. How do we know this? So the surface of the Earth, where you and I reside, is just the outer shell for an inner sphere or series of concentric spheres with its own flora and fauna, possibly of giant size, which may or may not be inhabited by a advanced lost civilization. Subterranean spaces are first introduced to science during the Age of Enlightenment in Mundus Subterraneus, 1665, written by Athanasius Kircher, based on personal experiences and observations earlier in his life with earthquakes, mountains, and volcanoes. Kircher imagined that volcanoes might be connected underground via channels of fire, and likewise that underground rivers might connect the oceans. Close to 3 decades later, Edmund Halley of comet fame is trying to figure out why the Earth's poles keep shifting. It was plain that these poles were not, at least all of them, fixed in the Earth, but shifted from place to place, as appeared by the great changes in the needle's direction within the last century of years. Now, considering the structure of our terraqueous globe, it cannot be well supposed that a very great part thereof can move within it, without notably changing its center of gravity and the balance of its parts. So that the only way to render this motion intelligible and possible is to suppose it to turn about the center of the globe, having its center of gravity fixed and immovable in the same common center of the Earth. And there is yet required that this moving internal substance be loose and detached from the external parts of the earth whereon we live, for otherwise, were affixed thereto, the whole must necessarily move together. So then the internal parts of the globe may well be reckoned as the shell, and the internal as a nucleus or inner globe, included within ours, with a fluid medium between. In this brief essay, Halley even postulates that there might even be life on this inner globe. Now, what may seem obvious to us was of course not obvious to them. These men were at the forefront of their scientific fields. I can't make fun of them. I'm not sure I could have come up with anything better myself at the time. So their mistakes are understandable. They're just trying to figure out what's going on. And it's not even until 1909 that we find out that there is a molten core at the center of this planet. And now we're moving into the 19th century, which is where I got dragged in when I found an article on the topic. In 1818, John Cleves Symmes, Jr. proposed his own idea for a hollow earth, same as the old hollow earth, except with holes, each being several thousand miles wide at the poles. And then he took this idea on tour. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel great diffidence in thus presenting myself personally to explain before so numerous and respectable an audience the many reasons I have to offer in favor of my theory of the earth. I presume there are few, if any, present who have not read my first declaratory circular dated 10th April, 1818, wherein I declared the earth to be hollow and habitable within, and constituted a number of concentric spheres open at their poles, 12 or 16 degrees. The idea never gained mainstream acceptance in society or in scientific circles. In fact, the mass of the earth had already been roughly worked out. This question was addressed in a roundabout way in the 18th century, first in 1738, and then again more definitively in 1774 in Scotland, by a couple of nerds. But there are a few methods by which we can know that the Earth is dense. Method 1, the Schehallien experiment, which calculated the mean density of the Earth by measuring the deflection of a vertical line due to the gravitational attraction of a mountain compared to the Earth. Gravity. She's a relentless hag that drags everybody down, but she's also a teacher. For this method, we need a steep mountain so we can get as close to the center of mass as possible. It needs to be a lonely mountain so there's no gravitational interference from nearby mountains, and if possible, it should be symmetrical-ish to make calculations easier. Schehallien in Scotland is just such a mountain. Now we need to know the volume of the mountain, so we're going to have to do some surveying. And we're also going to need to know what the mountain is made of to get its mean density. From there, measuring the deflection of a plumb line caused by the gravitational attraction of the mountain away from true vertical, we know the Earth must have a certain amount of mass and density to produce the observed gravitational effects. Now all we need to do is extrapolate, and we get the rough mass and density of the Earth. The Schahalian experiment showed that the Earth was roughly about twice as dense as the mountain, meaning the Earth was too dense to be hollow, or that the Earth was hollow, but just insanely dense. But the calculated mass and density of the Earth meant it was far more likely that the Earth was solid. Method 2, analyzing waves caused by earthquakes within the Earth's interior. Something about the speed at which these waves moved through rock and matter. It's all very scientific, I'm sure, with lots of math. Method 3, if Earth was hollow with an inner sphere instead of a molten core, or maybe just a smaller molten core within the inner sphere, then we wouldn't be here to begin with. Earth would be a cold, dead planet with either a weak magnetic field or no magnetic field at all to fend off things like solar radiation and solar winds. Editing right now. I don't know about you, but for my part, the amount of solar radiation that Earth's magnetic field protects us from is both impressive and terrifying. And quite frankly, a hollow Earth just wouldn't be able to do that. Could there be life underground? The Earth isn't hollow, but part of the hollow Earth narrative is that the inner Earth is or could be inhabited by more than just bats and glowworms. Specifically, could a breakaway group of ancient humans have migrated below and sequestered themselves entirely from the sun to live a life entirely of rocks? It might be possible, but highly unlikely. They would be entirely dependent on technology. There are a couple of reasons why this is not likely, and I'm going to list a few. 1, fresh air and water. We all need it. And you're probably not going to want to go too deep because the deeper you go, the more infrastructure you're going to need. You'll need ventilation for removing stuff like nitric oxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane from the air. Imagine the smog over San Francisco trapped with you underground. And of course, bringing in fresh water and ventilation will also help moderate the temperature depending on the location and depth. Speaking of location, it matters a lot. Like my grandma used to tell me, don't build your giant underground cities in places with seismic activity. Raw materials, if you're not venturing out to trade, you're going to be extremely limited in your manufacturing capabilities. You'll need some kind of power source, probably nuclear, maybe geothermal. Again, you need to build the means and the infrastructure to power your underground civilization. Waste, unless you're 100% efficient in all things at scale, then there's going to be waste. So what do you do with all the unusable byproducts of industrial manufacturing and consumption? What about the psychological toll? Human beings need open air and sunlight. Then there are logistical problems. Farming, food storage, living spaces, and optimal layouts for all of it. Population, that would have to be monitored and kept in check. Living space underground is far more finite than on the surface. Living underground full-time is gonna be a bummer. But that's what some people who believe the Hollow Earth idea think is going on, that an ancient civilization of humans moved underground.
Some of the oldest legends say that a tribe of descendants of the pre-Atlantean culture of Lemuria would have survived by taking refuge in the interior of the mountain.
Lemuria is another topic for another video, but let's stick with a real-world example of an underground civilization. Take the underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey, the largest ancient underground habitation known to exist. Construction beginning possibly around 800 BC, maybe a little before. Max depth, 280 feet. Max occupancy, 20,000 people. It had many levels filled with wine and oil presses, stables, cellars, storage rooms, rectories, and chapels. There were even living quarters and vent shafts. But for all this, despite the complexity of the Derinkuyu site, I haven't been able to find anything that indicates people lived there full time or any longer than they had to avoid invaders. Life underground was probably very difficult. The residents relieved themselves in sealed clay jars, lived by torchlight, and disposed of dead bodies in designated areas. Each level of the city was carefully engineered for specific uses. Livestock was kept in stables nearest to the surface to reduce the smell and toxic gases produced by cattle, as well as provide a warm layer of living insulation for the cold months. What are the odds a city like this would go unnoticed for so long, especially today when human beings have expanded to every corner of the earth? The more I researched this topic, the more I knew I wasn't going to be able to fit it into a single video. Part 2 is going to focus more on the modern narrative of the Hollow Earth. UFOs, Nazis, concave Hollow Earth. But for now, I'm signing off, going to do some more research, get all my stuff together, and thanks for watching. Peace.